here. All right. The tier list maker for the new meta, guys. You asked for it. Last video was super popular, so of course I got to do another one. And the meta has changed with the nerfs to Echo, Tracer, and Zen. That's the whole patch. The ball and the Sigma nerfs also happened since I did my last video, I think. So all those nerfs are live, which is interesting because if you remember my old tier list video, it was like those heroes were like I'm pretty sure the S tier was like this. And I think it might have included all of the heroes that like like all these heroes get nerfed, right? So actually I think the nerf was pretty well targeted. I don't like maybe the nerfs could have been different, whatever, but I like that they're at least nerfing the best heroes from a professional perspective. So first off, my girl Tracer, still S tier. Still S tier. The nerf, she had by far the smallest nerf. Most of the time, it doesn't even matter because most of the time at Tracer, you're fighting at close range. The only scenario this matters is when you're like mid-range tank poking. So heroes have big hitboxes, but you shoot them from medium range. I guess it hurts, but you basically can't tell this nerf happened, in my opinion. It's really minor. It's some tiny DPS output. So whatever. But Tracer's still God tier. Actually should be. I mean, this hero's ridiculously high skill. This hero should always be God tier in the top level of play. That's just how it should be. And she's not like broken God tier. There's tools to counter her. She's just probably one of the most reliable choices. Sometimes you don't play Tracer, but she's probably going to have the highest play rate, I would say, of all the DPS. I don't think there's going to be any permalocking DPS, like truly permalocking, but Tracer's the closest thing to that. In the tank role, things start to get a little more interesting, I would say. We've got Wrecking Ball. You know, I'm also going to cancel my queue while I do this because it might take a while, so I don't want to get a game. I'm going to get this done. In the tank role, we've got Ball. Still S tier, I would say. Still very good, but he's definitely taken a hit. And because he's taken a hit, I am going to put another, an old face, an old friend. You may have forgotten. You may have forgotten this one. DLC hero. Return. And I'm going to call Winston S tier, guys. You heard it here first. Maybe you heard it somewhere else first. But these heroes are actually both very good. The other heroes I'm going to put on the tank role in the S tier, guys. I'm going to put these heroes here too. Maybe I'll put them like this because, you know, this is how it works. I don't want to say Monkey Zarya is better or Ball Zarya or... I mean, Zarya works... How should I do this? It should be like this. All right, so you can play any of the two tanks that are next to each other, okay? So you can... Winston Zarya, that's an S tier comp. Ball Zarya, that's an S tier comp. And Ball Diva, also an S tier comp. You don't play Winston Ball. You don't play Winston Diva. You don't play those comps. But all of these heroes have a place. My personal opinion is that Diva is not that good. But I would say at the top level, Diva is like... that these four heroes are splitting playtime pretty fairly. Like, I don't know that it's clear which one's on top. My personal feeling is that Zarya is better. But Winston Diva is just not that good. And we'll get to that when I explain the Winston comp. That's good and like why it's good and like what the Winston comp is basically. But let's talk about the heroes that define the meta first, which is the tier point of the tier list, right? So the next hero in the top tier, guys, boom, your girl Brig. All the Brig main on the fucking Battle.net forums crying their eyes out. Oh, DPS players want to take away 25 HP. She's gonna be so bad. Broken hero perma pick. Read him and weep. People crying on the BNet forums. Read him and weep. This hero is still top tier in the professional play. Definitely the highest play rate support. It's not close. Brig, goated hero. Nothing changed. I mean, she's like slightly easier to kill, but she is still the most consistent pick of the support line. The tanks are kind of weird because it's hard to put this many tanks in S tier, but these heroes are all sharing playtime, so it's really hard to say. I don't think you can clearly say one of them is that much better than the other. I'll put a couple other DPS in S tier as well, and it's going to be Sombra and Echo. It's really situational. It's really map dependent. You can play any mix of these heroes. Tracer probably gets the most playtime, but some people, like Shanghai in the tournament, they're playing Sombra, Echo. Like, you can play this weird stuff, so... Or not weird stuff, but like I guess that's a sort of a newer comp as the Sombra Echo. Tracer's probably the most common. Like usually you're playing Tracer Echo or Tracer Sombra, but sometimes you play Sombra Echo. You know, it really is like a crapshoot, I would say, among these DPS in the top tier. And then we're also going to put Zen and Ana in the S tier as well. The key to understand about the Zen and the Ana is that basically if you're playing Ana, you're playing almost not always, but you're basically if you're playing Ana, you're playing Winston comp, right? You're playing Ana, you're playing Winston, you're nanoing your Winston, you're bubbling your nano Winston with a Zarya, so she gets high energy, or they can't shoot the nano Winston, he does a lot of damage, he kills stuff with the diving DPS. Brig peels the backline, Ana is more survivable, but less greedy, Zen does like so much damage, but doesn't have as much healing. So you can't really play Zen Winston, it's just not enough heals, but you play like Zen with Ball. Or, I guess you play Ana with either comp, but yeah. So basically all these, Brig is notably better, and notably, like, in the sense that you're never playing Ana Zen. You're playing Brig Ana or Brig Zen. Like, it's one of those two comps for support line. These are the S tier heroes: 3 DPS, 4 tanks, 3 supports. But there's a lot of combinations within these heroes. Like I think there's a couple combinations that, you know, fucking Zarya Diva is not played or whatever. Ana Zen is not played, but for the most part, there's a lot of flexibility between these heroes in different strats, different maps, etc., etc. In the next tier, though, there's sort of, I would say, variations on dive. And I'm going to put Ashe here. I'm going to put Widow here. I'm even going to put McCree here, yeah. I think the hitscan can work. You can play it with a Sigma, who's still good, although not nearly as dominant as he once was. Like, he's definitely not as popular as these heroes, but certain maps, like there's like Havana or whatever, you just play like hitscan all the time. You never play dive on that map. I guess you could. Maybe you could play dive on that map. But it generally, hitscan has like certain scenarios where it's more popular, but just most maps end up being dive maps. Sigma has like a, not necessarily only played with hitscan, but there's just some natural synergy there with the shield and him, you know, playing naturally defensive. It works well in that comp. You might, I don't even want to put Mercy in A tier. In my opinion, Mercy's like B tier. She can kind of fit with these comps, but you're still going to be playing, realistically playing Brig Zen with these heroes. Actually, you know, here's what I'm going to do. Rush comp. All right, so much like before when I had Rush comp with a tier of its own, I am going to do that once again. However, Rush comp is now the B tier comp. It's a little bit more popular than it was before. There's a little bit more scenarios where you're going to play Rush comp. Throw Moira in there too. Mei and your Sim, your Reaper. McCree could get played in this comp, but he can get played in other comps too, so I'm going to call him a little bit better. Maybe you play Doomfist. Whatever, man. Just mix and match these heroes. Maybe you play with Sigma, maybe you play with Diva, maybe you play with Zarya. Yeah, it literally doesn't matter. Just mix and match these bad boys. Heroes that C tier is like sort of works sometimes, but I just like don't really see these heroes getting playtime. Yeah, C tier, Hog, I guess, and I don't know, maybe Torv's here, and Bastion, unbelievably trash because people are playing this hard dive comp that just destroys Bastion. Like, he's just actually on Bastion. There's no way you could play this hero with this, like, Echo eating you alive from flanks and Sombra EMPing your whole team when you're grouped up, Tracer pulse bombing you. I guess Winston wouldn't be that good, but like Ball and Diva or something like that, and then, you know, supports are broken. Yeah, Bastion really, really sucks. Pharah basically doesn't get played. I mean, but I just think it's better than Bastion. Bastion, again, is in a tier of his own in terms of truly unplayable. I think all these heroes are fine-ish. Maybe Genji is like the best hero. Like, I don't know. Maybe I guess you could play Genji if they played like Mercy comp or something. There's ways I could see it happening, but yeah, Bastion is like, I've never seen anyone play it. Yeah, so this updated meta to reflect the current tier list. There's a lot of flexibility within the dive. Different teams play different stuff on different maps, and some teams match opposite stuff. We saw this in, like, if you've been watching the tournament in China between like 4 of the out teams, this is pretty obvious. Like, you could pick all this meta up from watching that tournament, so I'm not leaking anything here. All these heroes are, I would say, considered top tier. Like, any, like, certain, not any, but most combinations of these heroes is going to work. Occasionally you're playing a hitscan flex, but when you play the hitscan flex, typically it's going to be a very rigid Ball, Zen, Brig, and Tracer. Typically is very rigid if you pick these heroes. If you pick one hitscan, a Sigma, then the rest of your team is Ball, Zen, Tracer, Brig. Like, almost every time. I guess you could play Mercy. Like, in theory, Mercy could work. The problem is people go very, like, ultra aggressive variants of dive, and Mercy just cannot protect a Mercy or a Zen or an Ana. It's just not realistic. Very, very rare. On like certain maps, I mean, Mercy's not a rush comp hero, but I feel like she could be like in the middle ground here, you know? I do feel like she's better than these heroes. All right, you know what? We'll put Mercy in A tier. Mercy's like A minus. Like, definitely these heroes are more played than Mercy, like by a lot. And rush comp is, again, like specialized certain maps. It's just maybe it's a little better than it was before. Some teams are playing Lucio Moira with the dive style, but again, it's like only Koth, basically. It's like certain close range. I think Ana is a very, very, very good hero right now. I don't think she's A-. I think she's S. I think Ana might be better than Zen. I think it's actually close between Ana and Zen. It's like not settled yet. What you have to understand about a dive meta is dive, even though it's the simple way to, even I would explain the metas in Overwatch is dive, poke, rush, right? Or dive, rush, poke. That's a simple way of explaining it. But what you have to understand is that rush comp is like really consistent. You're playing a Lucio and like you're running at them with like a group of close range brawling heroes that like group up on Lucio, and that's what you do. maybe you hold a power position inside a small room, and then you wait, and they come close, and then you rush them. There's like a little bit of complexity, but it's pretty consistent with what you do. Poke comp, stand in the power position, try to keep range, poke the enemy, and kill them before they can get on top of you. That's what it does. But dive comp is not simple. Dive comp is not just about diving. It is about controlling more of the map than your opponent and getting more value than your opponent over time. And when the dive eventually occurs, it's because you already had an advantage, and then the dive is like the closeout of that advantage. Even if you didn't have any kills, you forced more cooldowns than you were having to use. Your Zarya maybe got energy in the meantime. Maybe you had like better positioning with which to engage from, so you get a very advantageous initiation. But the actual dive is like an oversimplification, because in order to successfully dive, you need to have controlled the map using your mobility. So really what dive is like a map control mobility comp. So even though you can keep playing, Ball, Zen, Brig, Tracer, and then you switch like Widow, Sig, like the Ball and the Tracer are still getting orbed and packed by Brig and Zen and exerting a ton of map control. And then like Sig and Widow are just playing a defensive style, trying to get value because they're low mobility heroes. It's still like the Tracer and the Ball can just dive the backline and kill people when they get overextended or they get too grouped up and they can't deal with your... They're like too worried about Widow, then you get like a pulse bomb on them. So dive is much more complicated than the other two styles. It like starts to blend. Like a dive comp can be like half poking, half diving. Or you could play the Sombra comp as a poking style, even though all your heroes are dive heroes. You just poke and like farm EMP faster than them. So it's really open-ended how you actually play these comps. The most straightforward one is probably the Zarya Winston comp, because that's more of a clear diving variant. Like you do dive more aggressively, more quickly, because Winston is like only a short range hero. He doesn't usually do much unless you're diving. But especially Ball is this very versatile hero that can do very different things without actually diving. He can be a map control, space control hero that does not necessarily commit to a dive. So you have to think a little bit deeper to understand these comps. And the other thing about this is like, even though this is such a good, like these heroes are so good, this style is so difficult to play in ranked that like in NA, nobody plays it. It's crazy. I mean, Korea in ranked, like everybody is playing these heroes. Like everybody is playing dive. Everybody knows they're all playing these heroes. It's like 90% of the time. But in NA, there's so many players who are either like one tricks off meta that you just like don't actually play the style, and it's also very difficult to play. So even if you played all these right heroes, if you just like don't play it right, you just feed. Like the inferior comps will just roll you because one player is not good enough on your team and they just don't get value on their hero, or they feed before the fight, or they dive too early, or they miss the window to dive. So things can really go wrong in this comp. It is a very, you have to like keep the perfect balance, and there's not that much resources like excess. So you have to play very conservative, very smart. You don't have lots of shields to hide behind and stuff. So it's a very difficult comp to execute, but it's very clear at the highest level that this is the meta. So that's the current meta. Those are the adjustments. Honestly, a lot of heroes didn't move much. I think the biggest changes is probably the number of heroes in S tier, which actually means to me that the nerfs were well targeted. Heroes like Tracer, Echo, and Zen don't necessarily dominate the game anymore. They're just strong choices, which is like the right place for them to be. Ball doesn't dominate the other tanks. He's just a strong choice, and there's other choices that are reasonable. Sigma, I think, got the biggest nerf of all. I didn't think it would be this big, but it ended up really mattering a lot. But even Sigma, right, in the right comp, the right circumstance, you can still play Sigma. It's still a great pick, still A tier, Like, I still feel like you're playing Sigma and like a dive style more than you're playing Rush comp. This Rush comp is typically pretty limited on like there's certain maps, like just a couple maps that are super choked out, and you can hold chokes with Maywells and stuff. So is Ball Diva better or Monkey Zarya? That's a very contested question. Or Ball Zarya, like these are very contested questions. I don't think you can clearly say right now what tank comp is like the best. It's sort of a mix and a match between these all these four heroes. Yeah, personally, I like this meta a lot. I think the game's in a really healthy spot, but this is my take on the current meta.